All right, so welcome everybody to the spring 2021 session of the Berkshire County Outdoor Recreation Summit. We're all kind of coming off what was a pretty good winter for people who enjoy snow. um, Oddly, we might get some more tonight, but we'll all just look past that and look forward to spring's arrival. But so we thought this was a timely topic now that the trails are starting to unearth from under the snow and ice. And I think last year in particular, we saw a lot of hiking and trail activity, in part because of the COVID-19 dynamic and the growth overall in outdoor recreation in the Berkshires. And I think there were a lot of new people who were reacquainted with hiking and trail activity, and a lot of people completely new to it. I personally was really encouraged by how many new Facebook friends and Instagram friends who were out on the trails for the first time in the Berkshires, and kind of reacquainting themselves with the outdoors and kind of falling in love with all of the good things that the natural environment has to offer. Um, so we've got an awesome panelist here, group here to talk about a few different initiatives, some different clubs and groups, some new projects. So we will start with sort of this interesting alternative collaboration type model between Milltown, Hancock Sugar Village, and Greenagers, and just how we as a community can think differently about integrating a lot of different users together to come together in really compelling outdoor projects. And then we'll go into some additional presentations from some of our leading outdoor trail users and hiking groups. Appalachian Trail Stewardship through the AMC Western Mass chapter. We'll hear from the Williamstown Rural Lands with Dan Gura, Berkshire Natural Resources Council, who have extensive trail networks as well as conservation lands within their Berkshire's portfolio holdings, and Berkshire Camino, and a really fun entrepreneurial project that has sprung up in the last year or so and has a particular focus with trails. We'll also hear from Laura Brennan. We have an active survey that's out right now as a follow-up addenda to the outdoor recreation plan that was published around this time last year in 2020. We got a lot of great feedback from the community, and we've put a formal survey and feedback mechanism in place. So we have a couple more weeks of that that's open for the public to take advantage of. So we'll share some more details on that, as well as the expectations of how we can actually learn more about the data that's collected through that process. And then we'll wrap things up. We're going to try to keep this relatively compact so that people can get back to work and enjoy their lunch break with us. And there'll be many more things to come. Just quick admin, if you have a question for anyone on the panelists throughout the presentations, we'll be monitoring the chat feature as well as the Q&A feature. So feel free to utilize those tools. We will also have a recording of the we'll have a recording of the session, and so we can distribute that to people who were not able to make it today, as well as some additional information that we can send out in links via email, and we'll post it on various online sites. So with that, Laura, I think there's one more slide just kind of setting the tone on trails. So I think there's many people who are probably listening now are avid trail users or interested in our new trail users. We are so lucky in Berkshire County. We have over 850 mapped miles of trails here, and I think unmapped could certainly double or triple that number. And so there are so many different sites to go. I myself fall victim to this. I often go to my favorite hiking places. It's easy and sort of you just kind of autopilot. But there are so many amazing new trails and new sanctuaries and conservation areas to go and enjoy some new hiking. There are a lot of groups and clubs. Some are just informal on Facebook. Some have much more formality and regular engagement. So if you're new to the area or new to hiking and trail work, there's a lot of places that we can get involved. I was going to list some, but then realized we'd need a few slides for that. So I think following up, we can send a link to a few resources where you can discover some other hiking groups if you'd like to do this with some more affinity based like-minded people as well. And again, the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission, through their work with the Outdoor Recreation Plan, there is an extensive inventory list that you can find on their website, and as sort of an attachment to the plan. You can toggle on different categories. The hiking list is long, so if you're looking for any new places to discover, be sure to check that out, as well as the Berkshire Natural Resources Council Trails app. It's an amazing resource. You can find their properties mapped and identified on different thematic sort of lenses on what you'd like to find on a hike. Length and sort of difficulty, as well as other properties as well. So it's not just BNRC properties, it's an extensive Berkshire County resource. And I think some of the concern for locals, there's a little bit of a protectionist bent that sometimes happens. A lot of people love their favorite spot. It's tough when you drive up and you've got long waits and cars and the parking lot's full. But part of the point here is that we have so many trails. There's more than enough space for people to spread out and discover new sites. And it only helps the quality of our trails, the conservation efforts, all of the community building to make the Berkshires a great hiking and trail destination. It only helps when more people are involved. And that's sort of my own perspective. I'm sure there's other who's had a nuanced conversation around that, but there's a lot of ability to go and find new spots that are maybe a little less crowded, and really spread out the wealth of the trails in Berkshire County. So with that, I think we can kind of break out into the session, the formal session. So I'd love to, the first session, this is involving Greenagers and Hancock Shaker Village, and myself representing Milltown. I think what is so encouraging about the Berkshires as a whole is that there's a lot of collaboration. I think across industries, different partners, it's a collaborative community. And I think that's in part what makes this county so special. I think the outdoor recreation space is twofold. It's doubling down on collaboration, and the community is really strong. And I think it's very encouraging for others to participate and get involved. And so the last year, even more so, I think has kind of brought to light some alternative partnerships and different ways of viewing ourselves as an entity in the Berkshires. And Jennifer, I'll let you introduce Hancock Shaker Village, but I think you are emblematic of that. A historic museum, also recognizing that you have wonderful trails and outdoor recreation amenities on your property, and expanding some of those offerings within the context of a history museum. So I'll kick it over to you to do a quick introduction of yourself and Hancock Shaker Village, and then we'll go over to Will with Greenagers.
Great. Thank you, Carrie. The Shakers originally owned about 2,000 acres in Richmond, Hancock, and Pittsfield, and they gave over 1,000 acres to what is now the Pittsfield State Forest. So if you hike in the southern end of the Pittsfield State Forest, you'll see the Shaker Trail, which leads up to their holy Mount Sinai and across the Saddleback to another Shaker sacred site. And Carrie suggested last winter placing some art on the trails, which is a great idea. And we're working with Milltown on that. But separate from that, but also with Milltown and also with Will at Greenagers, to the south of our historic village, we have a lot of forest that is it's in Pittsfield and in Richmond. And in 1800, when the Shakers were really expanding, they set up a new cluster of buildings, which they called the South family. It was south of the historic village, which was not historic at the time, I guess. It was just a Shaker village. But the South family was where they put new believers. So, if you thought you were interested in Shakerism, they put you there for a year to try it out and see if it really was for you. And by 1849, they abandoned the South family, and they brought everybody into the central part of the village. And interestingly enough, the Shakers paid taxes. So if they weren't using a building, they would take it down or they would repurpose it because they didn't want to pay taxes on it. So the South family eventually just was eaten up by the forest. And 2 winters ago, I was hiking in there, and you can barely find the foundations because of the brambles and the trees, and it's pretty deep in there. And this year, we are going to be opening that up. We're creating a spur, and I'm going to turn it over to Will in a minute because it's so great that they're pretty much doing it. And we're going to reveal the archaeological remains of 5 buildings that were Shaker from 1800 to 1849. And I think if we waited another 30 years or so, they might totally be enveloped by the land and the forest. But it's going to be a new trail this summer that's going to open in mid-July. And Will, do you want to talk a little bit about what Green Acres is doing?
Sure, sure. Thanks, Jennifer, and thanks, Carrie, for having us here. Um, yeah, I mean, the type of trail work that we're doing at Hancock Shaker Village is kind of our bread and butter trail work in terms of creating ways through the forest for people to access different sites, whether that's cultural or a natural resource site or a combination of the two. Um, and for us, doing work at sites like Hancock Shaker Villages adds that whole other level of component, like Carrie was talking about, in terms of collaboration. We love working with other organizations, but the richest part of it for us is getting kids to these sites. We're a youth-based organization, and we focus on sustainable agriculture, we focus on conservation, and obviously the HSV partnership encompasses all of that. But what we're able to do with a project like this is, and what makes it so exciting, is that not only are we doing the bread and butter work, the kids are learning how to show up to work on time. They're learning how to employ some skills. They're learning how to work with each other and communicate. But they're also doing this on one of the jewels of Berkshire County, which it may well be their first experience on a site like this. And they're coming at it as a needed part of it. It's not like they're bust along to a spot that they don't really know much about or got a little introduction to and may or may not be into a field trip or something like that. Not to say we shouldn't do those things, but this type of experience often allows a different way into these amazing spaces for our local youth. And I'll emphasize that it's all local youth doing the work. And so they're literally investing in their backyard and doing the work. And that's the kind of stuff that gets us really excited. And we're really looking forward to heading up into the woods at the village and continuing the partnership. I should mention that that we've done work at the village in the past, and it's just a great site to be. And like I said, the deepest part of it is really ingratiating local young people into a site like Hancock Shaker Village.
Yeah, that's great. I think this is so emblematic of how you can combine missions across different organizations. We're very interested in supporting projects like this from a Milltown perspective because of our outdoor recreation strategy and desire to really continue to boost the infrastructure of outdoor recreation in the Berkshires so it can host local use and visitor use. Jennifer, blending the arts and culture, history, education with an outdoor lens just adds one extra additional layer into the offerings of Hancock Shaker Village. And Will, with the integration of the very youth development, sort of like young adult development type work, as well as the functional product of you've got great trails at the end of it. So it's a really cool process to see how these connections can be made and how there's just so much mutual benefit to be explored across these sites. Jennifer, could you tell a little bit more about how the public will be able to use these trails and enjoy these trails and some of the surrounding areas this summer?
Yeah, well, we have a farm and forest trail right now, which is sort of a U-shaped trail through the southern woods below the village, and this will be a spur off of it. And so people can enjoy, and the farm and forest trail is broad, it's handicapped accessible. And so people will be able to walk down into that area. We're hoping they'll be able to picnic down there. We're going to have some benches. So, but we're also working with Milltown and others on the Shaker Trail north of us. You know, the Shakers. In the mid 1800s, there were 19 Shaker communities in the United States, and word from on high came down that said, find the nearest mountain near you and clear that mountaintop and create a sacred place where twice a year the entire village goes up to it. And so if you can imagine the entire village, that the elderly and the young would be taken in ox carts and they would go up to what they call Mount Sinai. And a hiker in the Berkshires in the 60s found this spot, and with the help of the Boy Scouts cleared this trail. And now we're working with Milltown and Pittsfield State Forest to really to clarify that trail more. You know, it's accessible from Route 20. It's north of Route 20. It's a beautiful hike. And we're also going to put little moments of art along the way so that people can hike north of the village and south of the village.
Amazing, yeah. The so there's one extra place that you can add to your hiking bucket list if you're not familiar with those trails in the back. Will, before we wrap up, we've got a question from Alex from the Roots Teen Center. It feels like there could be some synergies there, talking about getting teenagers involved in North County. Where are your summer crews operating? I know you have several sites usually in a summer, and have done some shoulder season activity also. How can kids and teens get involved in Greenagers this year?
Great, yeah. We have crews operating in Pittsfield all the way south to the Connecticut border and south of there. And we actually have some of our early season youth working on a project in Columbia County right now. But applications are open. They're on our website. We are still taking applications for trail crews. So please do apply. And if we don't have a particular project on the docket this year, say for North County, I still would encourage folks to reach out and connect with us, because they're traditionally, a lot of times we've gotten things started in an area that we're not necessarily working through a volunteer project. And if folks have a small project that we can come up and help with, bring some kids along that are interested in doing the work, we'd love to do that too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys, for sharing a little bit about this. This kind of collaboration with all these different groups coming together, sort of in an alternative relationship, is so encouraging. I think it's what makes the Berkshire super special place. So thank you. If we have any follow-on questions about Hancock Shaker Village or Greenagers, please feel free to send in the chat, and we can pass them along and connect them with people also. So thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Moving on, next, we will touch on the Appalachian Trail. So we have the benefit of having truly a world-class through hike through Berkshire County. There's some well-known long distance trail networks throughout the world. Europe has their specialty ones. Asia's got some of theirs. Pacific Crest Trail. We've all heard more and more about these long haul trails, and the Appalachian Trail is sort of one of the OG long haul trails. So we are joined here by Cosmo Catalano of the AMC Western Massachusetts chapter, focusing on Appalachian Trail work. So Cosmo, I will kick it over to you, and please share with us a little bit more about Appalachian Trail activity and updates in Berkshire County.
Great, thanks you. It's a pleasure to be here, and we have kind of the through trail through the county along the ridge tops. And we are, like many of you, struggling with not only much higher use than normal, we are also, as an organization, trail-wide, trying to find ways to increase the diversity of both trail visitors and trail volunteers. So we're working kind of in two opposite ends of a spectrum, where we're concerned about increasing visitor use, but yet we want to make sure we are welcoming to as many people as possible, particularly people who may not have enjoyed recreating in the outdoors. So part of that effort is to assess ways that we can segment the trail into experience zones. That is to say, we can find parts of the AT that are rugged and remote, that require perhaps a higher level of skill to successfully visit, and others that are a little less demanding. We're trying to be able to find a way to match visitors with the experience that they're looking for, that matches what they want to see and what they want to do and what their abilities are. So this is kind of a basic tenet of what we would call in the government world visitor use management, which sounds pretty much horrible. But we do have to find a way, if use continues to increase, to really protect the values that make the AT what it is, which are things like a sense of remoteness, a sense of self-reliance, close contact with the natural world without a lot of other outside distractions. Yet we have to make this a welcoming place for people to visit. So we're just in the very beginnings of assessing, not only in the Berkshires and Massachusetts, but trail-wide, a means to identify management zones on the trail that we can rate from what is considered to be wilderness, and in some cases is designated wilderness by the federal government, not so much up here in New England, but considerable distances down south, to something that is more kind of front country type of an experience. So your trail experience that you might get in the Tyringham Valley or in the Housatonic Valley near Great Barrington could be a vastly different experience than you might have on the South Taconic Ridge from Great Barrington south to Connecticut. So by identifying these zones, we can then match people's interests with what we have to offer. So that is, we're just beginning that process, and we're proceeding with great caution. We do not want to be giving anyone the impression that we're trying to exclude people from this resource. This is a resource for the entire country, and we want to make sure that people are getting the experience they desire. So we're trying to find ways to identify those locations that match well. Other kind of highlights on the trail, of course, we had a somewhat less busy long distance hiker season, with a lot of people who are traditionally northbound for a through hike on the AT from the south. We're getting off the trail last year in April and May. And so we did see a reduced number of long distance hikers. At the same time, the DCR officially closed AT overnight sites on their property, which is about 12 of the 14 available overnight sites on the AT in Massachusetts. And that closure remains in place to this day. We are not certain when that closure will be lifted or what DCR's parameters are going to be to cause that closure to be lifted. That aside, we have observed continuing use of these closed sites. We monitor these sites, we still maintain them because people are out there using them. So we're kind of in the middle of that little bit of tension. We are seeing in Georgia through hiker starts that are about like they were in 2019, which is one of the highest years we have had recorded in terms of registered starts. So we're going to probably see a more normal, whatever that means, year for trail use in the Berkshires on the AT. So we will continue to put our volunteers to work and try to take care of our campsites and trails, and we'll see what happens.
That's great. How, for someone who's not quite ready to go the whole distance, what is the distance of the AT? Over 2,000 miles, right?
Yes,
From Georgia to Maine.
yeah, it varies year to year depending on relocations, but 2,100 miles is a good round number, and 90 miles of that are in Massachusetts. And in southern New England, the AT is very easy to get to. We have a lot of road crossings. There are lots of parking areas. So it's really easy to get on that trail for a couple of hours a day. You can go for a week. There's a lot of these opportunities out there, and we want to make sure people are aware of them. And we also want to provide some education for how to conduct yourself on the trail so that there's that resources available to everyone who's coming after you.
Sure. In the Berkshires, for those who aren't quite ready to bite off the whole 2,100 miles, what would be a recommendation of yours for a sort of entry point and to experiencing the AT here in the Berkshires?
Yeah, if you were thinking of an overnight experience on the AT, and you were new to the overnight hiking experience, my suggestion would be somewhere in the Pittsfield area, say between Dalton and Route 20. There are two overnight sites, which I have to say again, are officially closed by the state, that are about 7 miles apart. So that's a pretty reasonable day's hike. Both of those sites have a 3-sided shelter. However, we recommend strongly that people continue to tent at these sites rather than congregate in the shelter. The shelters are very well ventilated. There's only 3 sides, but they can become quite crowded when there are a lot of people, like on a weekend or a holiday weekend. So I would come prepared to tent, learn how to set up your tent before you go. And that's a pretty easy segment in terms of terrain, as well as having these well-spaced overnight sites.
That's great. We had a question about the I think what you were alluding to with the user management and advice on hikers on how to act responsibly. Granted that this is a very protected environmental conservation concern. What are some just quick tips for those venturing out onto the AT and other DCR properties to keep in mind this season of how we can all act responsibly on the trails?
I would say the first thing, if you come to the trailhead and there's no parking, find another place, find another one of the 850 miles of trails that are available in Berkshire County and try one of those out. That would be, getting to the trailhead is kind of a challenge, or arrive really early in the day and beat the rush. Anything you carry in, you should be carrying back out. So don't leave your trash at the campsites. Don't, just basically make sure that you're leaving the place as beautiful as it was when you got there. And try to be quiet, enjoy the sound ambiance of the woods as much as the visual ambiance. Realize that you're sharing the space with others, and just respect, space and both physical space and kind of sound space as well.
Great. All right, we'll pass those notes along. And thank you so much, Cosmo. Great to hear from you. And I have a friend who I think is she's in North Carolina, and she's tenting. She's had ambitions to complete the full AT this year. So I suspect she'll be hanging out in my yard this summer.
Yep, she's one of the early ones, I think. She's already in North Carolina, so she'll be here in another couple of months.
They're making good
after all our snow melts.
Yeah. So stay down there a little longer.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate all the insights there. All right. We will move up to North County with Dan Gura with the Williamstown Rural Lands. Dan, Dan, we'd love to hear what you've been working on up north, and please introduce yourself.
All right. My name is Dan Gura. I'm the Lands and Trails Coordinator at the Williamstown Rural Lands Foundation. I've got a slideshow here I'm going to share. I'm actually really glad I'm going after Cosmo because you'll see some common themes here in what I present. So this is known as the Kiosk Project, which is essentially a way that we have made the trails in Williamstown a little more accessible. This is a map of Williamstown. The black polygon there is our town border, and then the red lines are all of the trails that we have here. We've got, I think, access to over 100 miles of trails in Williamstown, and we've got 38 trailheads that you can use to access those trails. I started noticing a couple years ago that most of the trail use is actually concentrated at just a few of these trailheads. Up at Petersburg Pass at the Taconic Crest, at the Clark Art Museum at their Stone Hill trails, the Pine Cobble Trail at East Mountain, and then of course the Hopper at Mount Greylock, which is sort of a bummer for a couple reasons. From a management point of view and a natural resource impact point of view, we have these few areas getting really hammered by hikers, and because of the traffic sort of areas along the trail getting trod over and that kind of thing, just from the high use. And then it's also, I think, a really big missed opportunity for locals and for visitors to the area. They may think there are way fewer trails than there are, or they're going to have a really crowded hiking experience, and it just kind of results in, I think, a missed opportunity. So why does this happen? Well, this is actually the trailhead for the most popular trail in town. This is the Pine Cobble Trail, and you are probably thinking, well, it doesn't really look like anything is here. So I think I started thinking, like, why does this happen? Like, why do we have this classic trail in town that has very little identification from the road? And I think the Berkshires has like a really long recreation and hiking history. And so there's this body of institutional knowledge where, certain trails like the Pine Cobble Trail has been here for, I think, over 70 years, and the locals know it and people know it. And so it's sort of, no one thinks like, oh, how do we make this easier for people or for people new to the area? And I think what happens is it's sort of alienating for people who move here or people who are visiting. Even if they get the recommendation to hike here and are lucky enough to get to the trailhead, they don't know how steep it is. They don't know how long the trail is, what trails might be branching off of this. And it can be sort of intimidating or lead to a poor experience. And so that's where we have this idea of the Kiosk Project. As you can see, we now have a kiosk at this trail. And these are photos of 8 kiosks we put in during the past year. We did 10 total. And the thinking behind this was, let's identify 10 high quality hiking areas in town that are underutilized. And then I approached the landowners, which in this case were the state, DCR, the town of Williamstown, Williams College, and then a couple of properties that we actually own at the Land Trust. And I said, hey, I want to get this sort of consistent structure at all these trailheads so that people can identify that there are trails here. If we do the legwork on this project, will you let us put these up? And they said yes. And so we contracted with a designer out of Denver, and he came up with these really nice maps, these map panels, which, as you can see, we have a map of the hiking area. We have written trail descriptions and a rating system similar to what you might find at a downhill ski area. And then we have highlighted trails on the map. So this map, it has the red lines all around it, which actually correspond directly with the written descriptions. And we have other trails shown, but those are sort of peripheral and not specific to this area. And so the idea is someone can show up at this spot and get a better idea of where to hike. And the structure of this project was actually really specific. It sort of has 3 tiers. We're producing a brochure to accompany these, which we'll put at the Chamber of Commerce, at hotels, at our office at Sheep Hill. And it'll highlight these 10 spots on a map and with short descriptions so that people can pick it up and say, oh, these are some great hiking options. And then when they are driving or walking to the trailhead, the kiosk actually serves as sort of a, like a billboard. It says, hey, you're in the right spot, park here, there is hiking here. And then the map panels are the real key component, because then, you can get out of your car, see what the hike has to offer, see what the routes are, see what some safety information is. And I think it'll result in a safer experience, more comfortable experience. And I think it'll tackle a lot of the issues that Cosmo mentioned in his talk, which is how do we get people new to the outdoors, or people who are less comfortable outside and having a good experience. So in summary, come visit the trails in Williamstown. We have a lot of them, and we're making it easier to find them.
Awesome, thank you. That's those are beautiful kiosks, and it sounds right in line with the theme of getting more people outside, but at a broader diversity of spaces. So there's less crowding. We had a question about Leave No Trace that could probably any of our panelists could chime in on this, but particularly Cosmo and Dan. Are there concerted efforts and collaborative efforts across the Berkshires going on in that sort of Leave No Trace and responsible trail activity, or what are you individually working on within your organizations to promote that?
I can speak a little bit for the AT. We have kiosks at many of our road crossing / parking areas, and there is a part of that kiosk has a panel about Leave No Trace practices. I think for the first time hiker, that's a lot of information to soak in. So we really try to just say things like carry it in, carry it out, really simple, basic stuff for the first time hiker. And a more experienced hiker can probably take in things like digging a cat hole and how to go to the bathroom in the woods and things like that. That's a little more.
That's a whole other topic.
It's a whole other topic and a whole other level of
on how do you go to the bathroom outside.
Yeah. So we don't have a kind of a really out in front Leave No Trace message other than carry it in, carry it out for the AT.
And Dan, how about you on your property? You have, it sounds like, in Williamstown is emblematic of that as a whole. It's got that tight intersection of locals and visitors and sort of short-term population associated with the college. What has been the biggest challenge in terms of user activity on the trails to date?
I think you've really sort of nailed it on the head with the Leave No Trace part, and it wasn't really an issue until last summer. We had such little use that, I rarely found trash on the trails, but now every time I go out, there's toilet paper, there's food wrappers, the whole deal. So I think an education campaign kind of needs to start, and we need to take it from the corner of the kiosk panels, like Cosmo was saying, and kind of bring it front and center and educate a little bit. Because it really does detract from the experience, and it's bad for the environment too.
Sure. All right. Well, I look forward to expanding my own hiking bucket list up in Williamstown. I'm probably guilty of going to those same old well-known trailheads. So this is great information just for me personally. So moving on now, in a very related topic, we'll bring in another large land steward in Berkshire County. Tyler Fogg and Mackenzie Greer here from Berkshire Natural Resources Council. And I'll kick it over to you guys to introduce. Tyler, I think you're up with some discussions on what's going on with BNRC and your approach to trail building. And so we'll kick it over to you.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. Yeah, thanks for putting this together. I have a slideshow just kind of outlining the way that we approach trail management and new trails at BNRC, and I'll share that and kind of burn through it so we have time for more commentary and discussions and things like that. So here we go. Oh, bear with me. There it is.
Great.
Has everybody seen what I'm seeing? Great.
It looks like it's loading, Tyler. There we go. I can.
Awesome. All right. So BNRC is a conservation organization. We help people conserve land, help partner organizations acquire and conserve land. We steward thousands of acres through monitoring, maintaining and building new hiking trails, about 60 miles of trails, and work in habitat restoration projects. And we engage with the community through education programs, as well as extensive volunteer network that really is, they really allow us to do a lot of the great work that we do. Lots of awesome volunteers. Right now, one of our the big things that we're working on in the trails world and in general is with a high road initiative. It's a vision for an interconnected series of trails with communities and supporting resources. And we aim to offer a wide range of experiences, everywhere from day hikes to longer, point-to-point connections throughout communities. We're opening the first leg of the high road on Yoken Ridge in Pittsfield at Bosque Mountain. And we're going to be able to connect all the way through Lenox Mountain down to the town of Lenox. It's really exciting. So stay tuned for that. Coming soon.
Awesome.
So yeah, some of the things we think about at BNRC with trails and is, what's our responsibility as trail maintainers and builders for the resources that we're stewarding. We try to think about the long-term implications of a trail, as we get into its, formation, or if we acquire something that has a trail on it or something like that. We feel like, and this has been touched on, Carrie, I think you mentioned, we have a lot of trails in Berkshire County. And so the question becomes not only, what's a good place for a new trail, or how do we get people to an interesting location, but also what kind of experience we want to provide on trails. We have the ability to make decisions like that, which is a great opportunity for us. We have a range of trail environments that we work on at BNRC. These are some photos of some of the work on Yoken Ridge that was done. This is an example of some of the sustainable practices that we try to follow by using different trail features to kind of, like I said, help steward that experience for folks, and also protect the resource. That's what we look at doing with trails, is use them as a way not only to create an interesting experience for hikers, but also protect these, really wonderful environments that we have the ability to be a part of. When we look at where we might want to put new trails or reroute existing trails, we need to think about both the sustainable construction guidelines that we want to use, but also we need to be informed by the ecological and the human environment. So that's like other trails, who uses trails and how they're used, and how does that help us make decisions about the best way to create the systems that we want to create. Wayfinding and signage plays a huge part in that, as Dan was talking about a minute ago. It helps create the kind of experience for folks that we're looking for, so that we can be informed about how best to maintain those resources, and have a heads up on how people are using them. So, and it also, we want to make sure that with things like this, we're also allowing for a sense of discovery. That's a big reason people get out in the woods, right? It's because they're looking for that getaway and maybe that sense of adventure. So if we can help with that experience as well, we want to do that. One thing that we're in trails wise that we're working on at BNRC also is looking at accessible trails, not only what that might mean traditionally with things like a boardwalk or a gravel path, but also what the different ways, the different things we can think about when we think about accessibility, like reaching out to diverse communities, maybe communities that haven't traditionally been welcomed actively to the outside or to some of these locations. So we're working on that as well. One of the big projects that we have, kind of a case study in all this right now, is at Stevens Glen in Richmond. It's a really great property that's become a little worse for wear over the years with a very dynamic stream system. That the trail crosses several different stream banks in numerous locations, and some of the bridges have become undermined. And so we're working with a contractor now to rehabilitate and reroute some of that trail, and also rebuild the bridge in a different location. So that's an example of, kind of taking a heavier hand in places, because it's really the reserve that requires our effort in order to not only protect and promote an experience for hikers, but also protect the land that we're lucky enough to have access to. So that's what I got, and I hope everybody gets a chance to check out BNRC properties, check out our website, and we have an awesome mobile app as well.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Tyler.
Sure thing.
I know all of our panelists will appreciate this, but we sometimes, as the users, we probably take for granted all of these beautiful trails that just happen to be there in the woods. And I know that in a lot of cases that takes a lot of maintenance, some very focused and complex trail building that balances the function and all of the other concerns that you outlined. And so
Yeah.
I know you and Will, that's right in your wheelhouse with what you're doing on a daily basis, and looking forward to. So thank you for that, because that's a huge way of building that accessibility into the natural world for so many people.
And it helps create a real stewardship culture as well. And that's something that Will was mentioning about getting youth out into the woods. So that's a huge resource too, is just kind of keeping that tradition rolling. So
yeah, can you speak a little bit about some volunteer opportunities? We've had some questions about how to get involved, and I know that there's a mix of contracted trail building, but also BNRC has a large volunteer core as well. Can you talk a little bit about
absolutely
that, your organization?
Yeah, we have a very enthusiastic volunteer core, and do a range of different projects from habitat restoration and things like that, all the way to trail maintenance and building. And some folks actually take on specific trails as trail stewards. I would direct people's interest to Mariah Alman, who's our volunteer and outreach coordinator. She does a great job managing the, like I said, extensive and very enthusiastic group of volunteers that we have. But we're always, always happy for that. So.
Good. Many hands make lighter work.
Yeah, we'll make it too easy on anybody, but
that's right. So with mention of the high road, that's been a really popular topic for a lot of people in the county. And it brings a new experience. We have the AT, that is the classic sort of more wilderness style hiking, and the high road is bringing on another different long distance through hike, much more truncated than the whole eastern seaboard of the United States. But can you talk a little bit about what the vision for the high road is, and how people can get information on that, and some of the timing of that? We have a question about some of the timing.
Sure. Mackenzie, would you care to talk a little bit about the high road?
Sure.
Thank
Happy to. So the High Road is a really exciting vision for a more connected Berkshires. We have abundant trail networks, we have abundant open space, and we have beautiful downtown centers and city centers. And the vision of the High Road is really to connect it all. So for someone who might be visiting, it provides an experience where you can explore the Berkshires on foot. For those who live here, the goal would be to make the outdoor resources, trails and such more accessible, to sort of bring them closer into town. So the first place we really started that effort is Yoken Ridge, where our work, BNRC, started over 50 years ago. We're working with a bunch of partners along that ridge, from Milltown and Bosque Mountain, really serving as the northern trailhead, through to BNRC's Mahana Cobble Reserve, that's just south of Bosque Mountain, crossing Mass Autobahns, Pleasant Valley Ridgeline, into the Lennox watershed, and then back to BNRC's Yoken Ridge South Reserve, and into Lennox. And we're really excited to be opening that first leg this year. It's comprised of routes people have already been walking and a lot of existing trail, but knit it together in a way that gives people a real long distance option. And also with that came a lot of improvements to certain sections that really hadn't had a comprehensive management or sort of trail oversight. So we'll be putting out that trail this summer and really sort of opening it up to the public, and that will come through, we'll have information on Facebook and our social media, our website. It'll be included in the app and such, and so you'll be able to kind of choose your own adventure depending on where you want to start and where you want to end up. Our target date is sort of a moving one, just because we have a number of things that are coming together in a really exciting way, but we have some work to do around that. Certainly COVID in the last year made us sort of say, okay, we got to plan for a real increase in traffic, and not that we weren't already doing that, but it really heightened that, and being really careful that in some ways this alleviates some pressure, like Dan was talking about, rural lands efforts, and make sure that we're working well with all those partners along that ridge line. So it's exciting, to your first themes that you started with, of really tying together these different landowners who conserve land for different reasons, but together, sort of creating an experience that is really enjoyable and gives people sort of a new way to explore the Berkshires.
Yeah, awesome. And I know probably all of the panelists here, that word collaboration, I'm sure all of you have touched one another in some way as your missions and properties and goals intersect and programs. I loved what you mentioned, Tyler, about the sense of discovery. And we've had the benefit of working with BNRC through our involvement with Bosque. And I had never seen that the view from Mahana Cobble and a few of the viewpoints from Yoken Ridge, and it's truly a special sense of discovery for someone who's been visiting Bosque and have lived in the Berkshires since I was little. So I think that's a great point to kind of reinforce of why we love the nature trails and having this infrastructure in the Berkshires so much. So thanks, Mackenzie and Tyler, for sharing that. We've got some resources too that we'll be sending out to the group on all of our panelists. So there's been a few information requests that have come through also. So we'll be sure to provide some additional links and resources to everybody, so you have it in one place. All right, and then moving on to our next topic, Mindy Moralia with Berkshire Camino. I love this this project that you're working, this business that you're developing, Mindy. It kind of intersects the timing of the outdoor recreation economy and how much growth is there, and really how the Berkshires is so well suited for entrepreneurial efforts, segueing with a really amazing environmental and human focused mission. So I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you, Carrie. Yeah, so Berkshire Camino is a new startup business. I'm a member of the E for All Entrepreneurship for All Winter 2020 cohort. And I was workshopping an idea last year to develop a network of hostels in the Berkshires, which would support long distance walks through the region. And I did a pivot as a result of COVID, but also as a result of what I learned through the program. And stay tuned, that might still be down the road, but I've decided to focus on the experiential programming aspect. So just to state what Berkshire Camino is, we lead a short, either 1 hour, half day, and ultimately multi-day hiking journeys in the Berkshires, inspired by the experience of walking the Camino de Santiago in Spain, which is something that I've done twice. Very briefly, the Camino is a pilgrimage route in across Europe, but primarily in Spain. There are many different routes, but let's just for generality say it's about a 500-mile walk. So unlike the AT, it's a little bit shorter. And people aren't camping outside, they're not digging cat holes, they're not cooking over a fire. They're walking from town to town, they're staying in hostels each night, there's a hot bed and a shower and a meal in a restaurant. And so that kind of experience is what Berkshire Camino is bringing to the Berkshires. Segueing in with the high road, as that evolves, will be a real natural fit. And we look forward to having guided hikes on the high road for locals and visitors as this year continues. So what this is it's like a mindfulness retreat on foot. It's an experience, and we lead guests to think about what it is to be on a pilgrimage and to just take that short little, well, not so short, sometimes about 5, 6 to 9 mile walks with us. And we go into pilgrimage mindset. And so we set an intention, we walk with curiosity, we try to let daily life just sort of fade away and be really present minded for the experience and see and experience what's happening in the areas that we're walking. And then we have a unburdening ritual that we do at the end. So it's this really nice contained experience that happens on foot. We walk through some really amazing venues. We have partnerships with Chesterwood, the National Shrine of the Divine Mercy, with the Mount. We go to right now one BNRC property, Parsons Marsh. So we have some nice partnerships, and we're grateful that they allow us to use their grounds as part of the route. So we walk on woodland trails, we walk on sidewalks through main streets, we walk through country roads, mapping our way from town to town. Oh, and I wanted to just also mention the Highland Farm is another one of our partners. And just a little plug, we have a cow there this year who's our mascot, and her name is Camino. And I hope you guys will visit Camino. If you follow us on social media, she's becoming a social media star for Berkshire Camino. So I think this is going to be really amazing for locals and particularly for visitors. We're working with lodging partners to create awareness for that. And we've got somewhere between 6 and 8 routes that we'll be offering this year for our half-day walks. We'll be doing 4 different town center walkabouts that are a little bit more historical and cultural focused. And I'm really interested in working with some special speakers who might want to come along on some of these walks. So if there's anybody out there listening and you want to be a part of that, please feel free to reach out. And one last thing I wanted to say, we're really trying to do our part to minimize trailhead parking crowding by having our guests park at municipal parking lots in downtown centers, like in downtown Lenox, for example. And then we use our van that we own, that we then transport people to the start of the walk, and we drop them there and then they walk back. So these are linear walks. And we're keeping the trailheads as clear as we can. So trying to do our part with that.
Thanks, Cindy.
So yeah, that's the highlight.
I think it's something that active people who are local to an area or used to hiking and navigating take for granted. But I think this provides such an important service for people who can be intimidated or don't want the hassle of figuring out where they're going, especially the visitors have want to have an outdoor experience. But would like to lean on someone else, an expert, to help them get there, navigate where they're going, and so it takes some of that pressure off them to do
Very
it
much,
on
yeah, we're
themselves.
very much focusing on making it easy for people so they don't have to do a lot of research. You just book and show up. We give them the background that they need to be prepared for the walk, and we're creating safety, safety in numbers, safety by having our guides, and you know, making it something that lets people engage in a really safe, COVID-friendly way.
And I know last year you successfully ran several outings. What kind of customer are you looking to attract, and have been sort of attracted to this?
Mhm. While I think that this is open to people, of many different backgrounds and ages, I found that people who were showing up tended to be women like age 50 plus, and those are the people that tend to walk the Camino in Spain. So I'm starting by targeting there to serve that audience, and then eventually we'll expand from there. I'm already getting inquiries from people from outside of the Berkshires saying, hey, I'm interested in your walks. Where can I stay? Or, how many days should I plan to come to do this? So excited about, having this be a draw, to the Berkshires. And over time, as we have more of these long distance opportunities, whether those are weekends or week longs or whatever they may be, I think it'll be a really exciting new way to experience the Berkshires.
Great. Yeah, building a sense of community and a place to resource to go and take some of the guesswork out. I can certainly appreciate that when I'm on vacation. You don't necessarily part of the fun is the research, unless you just want to go and have a good experience.
Yeah.
So it's good for multiple parties here. So thank you for sharing, Mindy.
Yeah.
So we'll take a slight pivot now, and thank you so much to our panelists for sharing all of what's going on in the trail work here in the Berkshires. And Laura Brennan, I will kick it over to you. Laura is a senior planner with the BRPC, and she's got some updates on the outdoor recreation plan. So Laura, I'll back over to you.
Thanks. So as many of you are aware, Berkshire Regional Planning Commission, with funding and support from Milltown, published the outdoor recreation plan for Berkshire County last year. It was probably about a month later, so a little under a year ago, we published that report. And many of you were instrumental in informing the content of that. And thank you again for filling out surveys and doing interviews and being a part of the conversations around what needed to be covered. We tackled that from the perspective of themes, as well as major activity areas that you see listed on the screen here. And we've committed to do an annual update. This year's will come out, be published probably in mid to late June. And so we are looking for major developments in the thematic areas, as well as anything in the activity areas. So it's been exciting to see how far a startup like Berkshire Camino has come since we published last year, and also how many overlaps and intersections are occurring between different land management organizations. I would ask that anybody who's on this webinar or listens later, who knows of a development specific to any of these activity areas or to the themes, please reach out and let us know. Don't assume that we have that information at our fingertips. We want to be as thorough as possible in reporting what has changed and evolved in the last year. We also have a survey out right now. It will be open through April 30th, and it is to gather feedback on the original plan that was published a year ago. You can either scan a QR code on your screen now or go to this link
Yeah, and I think it's you know, this was published in right at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. So all of the work and feedback really was pre-COVID. And I think we've all seen how much of an outdoor appreciation and adoption and further development and activity has happened in the Berkshires in the outdoor space in the COVID era, from after the point of which we published this report. And so I think that's even more emphasis on, you know, getting the survey out to friends and family and completing it and providing that feedback, because there's a lot has changed across the board in all of our lives in the last year, but certainly I want to really be concerted in collecting the feedback for the outdoor community also. So this is we'll distribute that link to the survey as well, so we encourage everybody to get that out there, so we can get as much insight as possible. We are just over an hour, but a little more than over an hour, but we'll have one final message before we wrap things up. Just a sort of a save the date for the weekend of October 2nd and 3rd. We will have our fall session in line with the Berkshire Outdoor Festival. And so just as all of you are doing, we are busy planning a few contingencies for how this festival will unroll in the post-COVID, hopefully a more of a post-COVID world. But there'll be several participatory events, races, and we're hopeful that we can do a lot of really engaging in-person events in October, which will be so fun to see people's faces live versus on the screen. So hold the date for the 2nd and the 3rd, and we'll be distributing more and more information as the date gets closer. And one more final thank you to all of our panelists for sharing what's going on in your world. We'll send out some more information from everybody. And thank you also to all of the attendees for your great questions, your inputs, and we look forward to hearing more from you in the coming months. So thank you all.